Hey guys, Mr. Sherman here. Going to go over a few basic features in MIT App Inventor, some of the basic functionalities, some of the basic components. So we have a couple prompts here we're just going to be working through. Should not take us too long. We're going to start with prompt number one. I just want an app that will display either hello world or goodbye when prompted. So let's hop over to App Inventor and let's do that. Oh, I should have deleted this. We're going to start over. So you're going to be at a screen that looks a bit like this. Nothing going on, nothing to see. All we need to do to start out is we're going to grab a label and we're going to grab a button. A label is what we use to display information. So I'm going to rename this my display label. And let's just rename this our hello button. And one of the things I want to make sure you're aware of, the name of your components, as you see, we renamed these, but it didn't change what it says on the screen. In order to change that, we need to look over here in the Properties tab. So if you see, for label, we have text right down here. I'm just going to have this say, waiting for prompt. Just waiting to tell me what to say. I'm going to go on my button. I'm going to find the text down here. And I'm just going to have this say, hello. Yeah, just hello. And take a look at some of the other things in your Properties tab. You can do anything from bolding your font to making it bigger. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to make this green for now because it's my hello button. And I guess green is, I associate that with hello. So now we have our button, we have our label, but they're not doing anything. And I'm going to do one small thing before we do any programming. I'm going to go over to screen one. And if you see this align horizontal, align vertical, I'm just going to go ahead and put everything in the middle of my screen. And you should see you can go bottom, top, center. You can go left, right, center. Boom, boom. So now, if you see this this button up here for blocks, this is how you add functionality to your apps. This is how you tell it what you want it to do. So if you click on that, you're going to be at a screen kind of like so. And you should see your two components down here. So what I'm going to do is when I click on my hello button, I want my label's text to say, and I want to point this out. Be careful, make sure you grab the right one. You want to grab the set here, not the get block. This is the get block. This is the set block. We're trying to set our label's text. We want to set our label's text to hello world. So take a moment, make sure you're testing that out. How you can do that is you go up to connect, and if you have the app downloaded on your phone, you can simply open up the QR code right here, scan it, give it a moment to load, test it out. If you have the emulator, you can go ahead, click on this. I personally think it's easier to use a tablet or a smartphone. I think it's a lot more fun. I definitely recommend downloading the app to your phone. So take a moment, get that set up. I'll give us all just a bit. All right, so now how we can get this, and now how we add the functionality to say goodbye, it's super easy. This already works. So we're pretty much just going to do this same exact thing, but we're going to change this right here to say goodbye. So a lot of people have this thought. They think, so can I just duplicate this and I can go in here and I say goodbye? Which I always say that's a good thought, but the issue is right here you have two errors. And if you click on it, it's going to say duplicate event handler. What that means, these yellow blocks here are event handlers. And if I have two of the same kind, the app doesn't know what it's supposed to do. If I were to go ahead and click the hello button, the app's saying, am I supposed to say hello world or am I supposed to say goodbye? You're telling me to do two different things. So it's a good thought, but not quite. So let's get rid of this block and I'll show us what we can do instead. If you hop over to designer and you click on your hello button, you can control C, control V. And look, that gave us a second one. And if you look on blocks, it duplicated all of our blocks that are associated with it. So let's real quick, let's set this up. Let's get this looking right. So this is going to be my goodbye button. I'm going to make it red for goodbye. Goodbye. And then you simply just go over here. Goodbye. So now we have two buttons. One that says hello world. One that says goodbye. Boom, boom. So same thing as before. Take a couple moments, test it out. Make sure it works. All right, so let's set up prompt number 2. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to delete these buttons because we don't need them anymore. And you should see it deleted the blocks that were associated with them. So be careful. If you delete something over here that has blocks associated with it, the app will it deletes. Just be careful. Make sure you're deleting the right thing. Don't delete things if you're confused because you'll lose the blocks that were associated with them. All right. So now we need a place to enter in two numbers because we can't add, subtract, divide, do any of that unless we have a place to enter two numbers. So if you see this text box here, I'm going to grab two of these. 1, 2. I'm just going to go ahead and name this one number 1. And I'm going to name this one number 2. And I guess we will need buttons. I deleted buttons, but we will need at least an addition button. Addition. Did I spell that right? I hope so. This is going to be my subtraction button. Subtraction. Multiplication button. Multiplication. Division button. Division. And we're just going to display our answer up here in the display label. So we got all of our buttons. I'm going to hop over to blocks, and I'm simply going to say, actually, I'm sorry, one quick thing. Make sure we check numbers only. We only want to be able to type numbers into these text boxes. Now let's hop over to blocks. And I'm going to say, when I click my addition button, I need to tell my label to display something. And what I want my label to display is the sum between number 1 and number 2. Watch this, and I can duplicate this, hit this drop down. I'm going to say when I click the subtraction button, I want it to be the difference between number 1 and number 2. When I click the multiplication button, I want it to be the product of number 1 and number 2. And last, certain but certainly not least, division is going to be the quotient. That's what it returns, right? The quotient of number 1 divided by number 2. So same as always, go ahead and make sure we're testing that out. Make sure it works. All right, let's head over on to prompt number 3. And prompt number 3 is going to be there's so little we have to change on designer, but I'm going to go ahead and delete some of. So prompt number 3 is just being able to set up an algebra problem and solve for it. So we really only need one text box now because we're only going to be having one entry. I'm going to get rid of these buttons because we don't need it. And really the only difference is we're going to be displaying to our label, but we need to set up our formula. So it's pretty much just being able to snap the blocks into the correct order. So if you see, we're going to grab this block and our formula is going to be, I'm sorry, we're going to do it this way. So our formula is going to be, if I can set it up right, 3 times the number we typed in plus 1. Take a moment, test it, make sure it works. All right, number 4, pretty much it's very similar. It's a bit of a different formula. So let's get rid of this one. Snap this right here. Get rid of that. And I'm going to go on designer. We're going to need 2 of these again. And I guess I'm going to rename this my calculate button because it's no longer just simply doing addition. And we're going to say, we're going to display number 1 times number 2 divided by 2, because if you recall, that is the formula of our triangle. So make sure we're testing, make sure it works. Boom. And I'm going to go to number 5. So this one, we're going to have to get a little fancier. We're going to have to actually use an if else statement. So what I'm going to say is, if number 1 is equal to number 2, display equal. Otherwise, display unequal. And we did it. Number 6, add up 2 numbers and say if they are greater or less than 100. So I'm going to go ahead, if it's, and we're going to set it up kind of like so. So we're going to need a variable. This is going to be my sum. I'm going to initialize this to 0. All this is telling our app is we have a variable in our app that's equal to 0 called sum. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set sum to be the sum of number 1 plus number 2. And I'm going to say if sum is greater than 100, sum is greater than 100. And let me fix this actually, because we're going to do something fancy. Sum is less than 100. And what that will allow us to do is then we can add in an else if, and I could say if sum is equal to 100, snap it back in. Sum equals 100. And you see, we just handled a lot of the basic functions of App Inventor. Being able to add numbers up, being able to set formulas up, being able to display our numbers using if-else statements, all of that. Just a very basic high-level overview of some of the basic functionalities. And there's clearly a lot more, but that should be enough to help you at least get started.